Hello, folks. Old Buster coming to you again. I got almost the last story here, vacation. I think it's going to be the next to last story. And this kind of brings the boys on into what's going to be going on later on in their lives after high school. Vacation. Buster was over by Newport last April when he see the feller stuck in the mud after a particular hard rain. Feller calls himself Sam. Buster was as stout as a bull, if you recall, so he got a hold of that old pickup he was a-driving and lifted her up on hard ground. Ain't the first time he'd ever done that, you know. Old Sam, he sure appreciated the help, because he was going to rent a little storefront and was going to was going to sell all manner of whatnots, kind of like a variety type store. Said he had him an idea how to make it work so as to bring it all under one roof. Well, Jesse and Buster was down on the river one evening last month and was a-gathering spilled beans, corn, maize, and rice for chicken feed. The grain would spill a mite or overflow off on the barges, and the folks there would let Buster pick up what he could for himself. They kind of liked Buster, just 'cause he was a likable type feller and always with a smile, you know. The other thing was, once one of the deckhands was on a tender and got himself caught between that and the pilot. Buster pushed the boat off of the man and got him loose without near a scratch. Now you say, how could that be? Well, as a wave from a passing tug rocked the tender into the pilot, the dolphin, and that's it, it's like a old tire or a buoy or something like that that's hung off the side there, kept it off of his leg but pinned him there. The tender got hung up like two cars bumpers, bumper to bumper, get hung up with one pushing the other. Well, Buster just had the stout to get it off of him and all. He used the force of the water and his strength to move the boat. Anyhow, all those fellers down on the river never forgot that and dearly appreciated Buster for doing it. On the way off the river, Buster seen Sam with his and gal Alicia, and old Sam waved him on over. Sam was getting a container of goods in by river instead of truck and was down there checking on it at the port. They all got introduced and got to talking and visited for a spell. Now Alicia was sure enough making eyes at Jessie, and Jessie turned red as a beet, I'm here to tell you. She was a cute little old thing. Anyhow, Sam told Buster he wanted to give Buster this here stock he done got made up for his new company. Well, Jessie heard all this and listened up about what all Sam wanted to do with his company and ciphered it was a dang good idea and might amount to something. Now that's how come Jesse had the idea to get into the distribution rights of Mother Nature's gift of youth. Didn't cost him nothing to ask for 'em and just might be worth a pile of money one day. That there Sam was plumb passionate about it all. Sam done give Buster 100 shares of what Sam called the Walmart. Buster thanked him and said he didn't owe him nothing, that Sam would have nothing of it, and made Buster take that stock, that 100 shares. Told him to put it back and save it because he thought it would be worth something one day. Well, Alicia batted them eyes at Jesse and told him and Buster to come for a visit over to Newport one day, soon. Them pheromones. Sam said if things worked out right, he was going to move to Bentonville in northwest Arkansas, and if they was ever in them parts, he'd be proud to have them over. Said his and wife always had something on the stove. Well, that got to Buster right quick. Well, after Buster got back into the house with the chicken feed, he found out his and Grandpa Lawrence Tipton was coming in from Kentucky to visit him for a spell. He's the one that give Buster his name, Buster, when he was just a pup. Taught him to drink White Lightning, too, out of his bottle when he looked after Buster down at Four Forks. Well, Grandpa Lawrence would go out and get a mess of squirrels and cook up some broth with them and feed Buster the broth out of his bottle, 'cause he said the boy would eat you out of house and home. Boy. Well, all the boys got to talking one evening after Wednesday night services at the Baptist church where Howard went. Jesse says he got the idea where to go. He wanted to see if and the rest of the boys thought it was a good idea too. Jesse said, let's go to the Bahama Islands. Well, Jesse said he done went to the library and Read up on it, and it sure seemed like all the families would have a rip snorting time over there. Well, the boys all agreed that it was a good idea and made up to get all the folks together and to hash it all out and plan their vacation. They ain't never been on none, you know. They're people. Reckon all concerned went along with the going, and their plans was made to go to the following break from school in the summer for vacation. They ain't never been on no airplane, and they was all looking forwards to it. Well, when they all met up on Thursday and off they went, Buster's Grandpa Lawrence had a few white knuckles, but everybody sure did take to that flight. They had to change airplanes in Miami, Florida, and danged if the plane done whacked another airplane's wing and taxiing into the terminal there. Well, sir, the trip folks done put 'em up on a boat for the island. Heck, fire wasn't only about 52 miles over there. Anyhow, they got there in late evening and got all settled in for their stay and was a-getting ready for day trips and such into other islands and thereabouts and looking around and whatnot, side-fiddling and gammon. They had a new resort with all manner of things to do, and the other islands had sights and water sports to enjoy as well. They all went to Nassau and Abaco and Exuma and day trips by boat to little islands for picnics and swimming. The boys done learned to do that scuba diving, and Howard especially liked it because of all the different critters he seen. Of course, them sharks didn't seem none too friendly, but they didn't bother nobody. Well, Buster took to scuba diving like a fish to water, I'm here to tell you. He even got 'em all to do a shark dive, and him and Howard was a-petting the darn things. They all went to swim with the dolphins, and their maws and paws had a right good time doing that, too. The women folk went a-shopping and bought all manner of doodads to take home. Grandpa Lawrence and the men folk got 'em some local-type victuals and rum and just laid up on the beach like a hog in sunshine. Now, there was one feller that was a-diving with the boys, and they got right friendly with him, name of Barton Williams. Well, old Barton jumped in the water to go a-diving, and his and darn haids swole up bigger than a basketball, I tell you. Never did see such a sight. Some doctors looked at him and told him he'd have to stay on the island till the swelling come down. Well, now, he laid up his room and asked Buster and the boys if they could help him out a bit. Said there was some kind of dang crickets a-chirping, and they was a-driving him nuts with his and Haid all swole up and all, and could the boys shoo 'em off or stomp on 'em or something? It's true, folks. Them dang crickets weren't a nothing but the ones, or nothing like the ones at home. They was bigger than a hen's egg and fast to boot. If it weren't something to see them boys after them crickets, it sure enough was a laughing sight if you ever seed one. When old Barton was a-hollering to make 'em stop that a-chirping, and the boys was a-stomping like they was a-clogging on a Saturday night. Well, the next day they set old Barton out in the sun for a spell on the beach and went on their way exploring. When they come back, Barton was sure enough in pitiful shape. He done fell asleep in his chair and got sunburnt something fierce. He done blistered up like that there bubble wrap. The true story. Boy, oh boy, was he a-wailing with them blisters and that swole up Haid. They got the boy over to a doctor and ain't seen him since. Reckon he healed up a mite and went on back home to Oklahoma where he was from. Buster was exploring along the beach and done found himself something real exciting like. He knowed that thing of sticking up out the sand had to be part of an airplane wing. Time he got back to the other boys, the tide come in and he couldn't get back to where he was. Well, it weren't that the boys didn't believe Buster, but they thought it had to be a stick or a log or something like that sticking up. They made to go back there the next day and look at it with Buster. Sure enough, the next day they lit out to find out what it was Buster done found. When they got there it was, plain as day. Tip of an airplane wing sticking up out the sand. They went to digging, was a-having that dickens of a time trying to dig it out, and soon figured they needed some bigger equipment than what they had on hand. Well, the boys left on out there to get some tools and stopped to get them a conch salad and a Miami Vice drink here at the bar. Of course, their folks didn't do nothing about it, or didn't know nothing about it at that. When the boys got back to the beach, there was a couple of rough-looking characters lurking about. They didn't say nothing to the boys and kept their distance, but was watching them boys intense like. Real interested in what they was doing. The boys kept at the digging till they could see into the cockpit of the airplane. 'Tweren't much to see but a frame and such, but Walter done up and hollered, "Looky here, boys, see what I done latched onto." It was a steel box of some kind, or t'other, and heavy as all get out to move out of that sand and water. Well, Buster hunkered down and got a hold and got her to a moving, and the other boys jumped in and they yanked her out of there. Fair-sized box, about like a small suitcase. Well, they tried to open the darn thing, but it weren't to be with tools in hand, so they decided to go back to town to get her opened up there. Them two unsavory characters was real strange like, staring at 'em hard, and was coming on towards the boys when Grandpa Lawrence drove up one of them rented dune buggies. Said he was looking all over for 'em, 'cause their folks wanted to go to some shindig with them that evening. They told Buster's Grandpa Lawrence what they done found, so he puts the box in the dune buggy, and they all head off towards the town. Well, when they got there, they had to get ready to go with the folks, so they didn't have time to open the box. Well, Grandpa Lawrence put the box in his bathtub because it was leaking water. Well, after all of them was ready and raring to go out for supper in the dunes, some kind of show the locals put on, the boys made up real quick to get back as soon as they could and open the box. The evening was a long one, but real fun, but Grandpa Lawrence and Buster's Grandpa Gus left on out early because of Grandpa Lawrence's gout was acting up a mite. When they got back there to the hotel, they see the light flicker going on in Grandpa Lawrence's room. Well, them two fellers was a handful, I tell you. If the robbers was looking for trouble, they just found it. Both them men hit like a kick of a mule. Grandpa Gus used to be a boxer and an athlete in the Paris Games during the WW1. And Grandpa Lawrence could poleaxe a mule with one lick twixt his and the eyes. 'Tweren't no man Buster ever seed as stout as his and Grandpa Lawrence, I'm here to tell you. Why, he even seen him outpull his and two mules once. Whopped them up, sent them to the barn, and moved a sled of logs himself. Pulled a 12-foot cross tie out of the mud and waddled out with it too. When Grandpa Lawrence reached down and began to lift, you could hear the suction from the mud and water as she began to move. Well, when he got her up, he throwed that old tie over his and shoulder and told Buster's Grandpa Gus and his and Daddy Russell to come alive. They was a burning daylight. Wore a size 60 overall too, big as a bear. Well, anyhow, both of them laid in and waited for them two fellers to come out. Yeah, they shouldn't have been there in Grandpa Lawrence's room. They see they was wrestling with that steel box, so they come right on up to them fellers and give them two thieves a thrashing they won't soon forget. Well, both of them tried to reach for their guns, but 'tweren't no time for that. Grandpa Gus waylaid his'n right quick with an uppercut that took out more than two teeth. Well, Grandpa Lawrence was right incensed because he done recognized the both of them fellers and didn't take kindly to a thief. He dope-popped the feller and he had throttled and then tossed him plumb over the balcony about 20 feet to the sand. The ruckus was witnessed by some other folks staying there, and they called the police. They come a-running and toted them two thieving fellers off to jail. Well, it was all real exciting, but 'tweren't nothing to Buster's two grandpas. They just had him a little snort of that old rum and sit and relax a spell before bedtime. Well, the boys and folks all come in and heard the story and made up to open the box in the morning. Well, right after breakfast, two fellers come in to talk to the boys and their folks about the box. Said they was Dalton and Devane from the Presidential Corps or some such organization that was looking out for the rightful owners of the box. Well, Grandpa Lawrence went in to get the box, and they all was going to get her opened up. The two fellers had some sort of tools to get it and popped it on open without a hitch. Lo and behold, it was empty as a jug on a Saturday night. Well, them two fellers said how they appreciated all the help and give the folks a card to call them if there was any more trouble. Reckon it was a big letdown with the box being empty and all. Well, everybody went about their day and the boys took off on to the beach again. Well, if that Walter and Howard weren't slick, they done snuck in Grandpa Lawrence's room. When all the talk come up of what was in the box. Walter and Howard knowed the feller over at Irwin Pawn Shop that taught him how to pick a lock. Them two got her opened up and nothing flat. Guess what they done found? A map. It was in a tube that was waterproof and was in mint condition. Walter and Howard just couldn't wait to spill the beans on what they done. Buster and Jesse figured as much because they just wasn't going to let anybody get one up on them, I'm here to tell you. All them boys thinks just alike, you know. Well, Buster, Walter, Jesse, and Howard was pretty good at figuring out things. They didn't fall off no turnip truck neither. You see, old Charlie Snyder, a friend they'd all known back home, done started the Union of Planners and Thinkers, of which the boys was all a charter member. They all studied on that old map, and it turned out to be a map to treasure for sure. There was all manner of trinkets and baubles with the main piece, and it all had to be worth a fortune. Seemed to be buried out past the mangroves and on a sand spit about 20 foot deep. Trouble was, it was going to be a pickle to get out of there. Sure enough, it had to keep quiet because of all the interest from all sides, crooks and government. Boys learned a long time ago you just had to earn trust now. The next day, the boys see the fella they'd met scuba diving and asked him if he'd known where the place was they had found on the map. They didn't let on what it was, that it was a treasure map, but just was wondering how to get out there. Well, this old boy was a local feller and liked to have a snort or two during the day and quite a few at night. That. The boys had seen him over to the captain's table, a local club, for a few nights when they was checking out the local nightlife. Nigel was his name, and the feller also played in a band and on the island too. Drove a taxi and guided folks for extra money as well as working on the dive boat. Nigel said he could take the boys out that evening as he had to catch a few fish for a special dinner his and boss was having later that night. Well, off they took, and the boat they was on was a real humdinger. Reckon you called it a yacht 'cause it was real fancy like. It had a little crane on the back, stern as it's called, that was used to hoist supplies and personal watercraft, as they say. When they got out to where they figured the stash was hid, they just lollygagged around a bit and waited till Nigel went fishing with his spear gun. The boys checked out where it showed on the map, and sure enough it was stuck out like some sore thumb. You just had to know what you was looking for. Well, now the boys had to make a decision on how to go about getting that loot out of there. A puzzlement for sure, because if they spilled the beans, every burrhead and peckerwood in the islands would be there looking for who knows what, but thinking there was money in the air. The boys figured to rent them a boat the next day and have a closer look. They done hustled them up some gear and all the tools and got ready to take off when Grandpa Lawrence come up on them. He asked the boys what they was going to do and wouldn't have none of it about leaving him behind. That's for sure. Not him. So they had to tell him about what they done, the whole story so far. Well, Grandpa Lawrence said to the boys if they didn't remember when Buster and him was playing them funny dominoes with the taxi drivers the other day. Caribbean dominoes, they called them. Well, they said yeah, they remember when Buster and him beat them 3 games in a row. Them dominoes had metal plates in them, and you had to slap down hard when you made a plate. Took the longest time to convince them fellers to even let them play at it. Appears the only reason they did was because a couple of the fellers had to leave for fairs. Well, anyhow, Grandpa Lawrence and Buster put a whooping the likes they ain't never seen before. Them local boys didn't think nobody could beat them, especially somebody from the States. They was all a wonder up till that final game. Buster jumped up and hollered, "This white boy may not be able to jump, but he can sure beat your tails at dominoes," and then slammed down the final rock to win the game. Well, after that, them native boys called them Conky Joes and accepted them like they lived all their lives there. Well, anyhow, Grandpa Lawrence got to be real friendly with one of the fellers that tended a real fine boat for some folks back east, and he took her out ever so often to keep her fit. He reckoned he could get him to take them all over to where that treasure was, and he sure enough knowed how to keep his mouth shut. Loose lips sink ships, he said. Well, they changed horses in the middle of the stream like John Wayne and caught up with a feller named Hartley at the dock near town. Well, Grandpa Lawrence had a little settee with Hartley, and he hollered for him to get aboard. They got on over to the site and jumped right on it. All the markers was there from the map, and after a bit of exploring they found an entrance to an underwater cave that opened up to a right nice big room. Fresh air and all. Danged if they didn't find all sorts of doodads, but nothing real special like the map said. Well, Jesse done got plumb perplexed. He got to studying the map, and finally Walter picked up and says, "Y'all got it all wrong, boys." Well, they all says, "How's that?" He says, "Y'all are figuring distance our way back home and not the way a sailor does it." "What you mean?" says Iry. "Well, it goes like this." And then Walter explained to him as he learned at a welding on a Navy job one summer on the coast with his and Uncle Frank. You done figured one statute mile, excuse me folks, where they figured just a plain mile. A statute mile is our regular mile of 5,280 feet, where their mile is 5,400 feet. Their mile is 7.5 cables, with 120 fathoms being one cable, and 6 feet being a fathom. So Walter says y'all is 120 feet off of the mark. Well, I'll be danged if and you ain't something, Walter Dwayne. Got something to working real good between them ears, Grandpa Lawrence says to Walter. Now, old Walter was as proud as punch, and a grinning like he done got his first kiss. Well, I had stepped off the 120 feet and began to digging in the sand. Wasn't long till they come to a heck of a big chunk of a limbering there in the streamers of sunshine leaking through the ceiling in the cave. You see, after they got up in the cave, it run back into that spit of land to solid rock and was above water level. That chunk of whatever it was just wouldn't budge, not an inch. The boys all dug a bit more and seed what it was a statue of, some kind that appeared to be gold. Well, Grandpa Lawrence hollered for Buster to come on over and get a hold. Now, Buster was right stout his himself, but his and Grandpa Lawrence was really a man's man. Ain't no telling what that man could lift. Back in Tipton Holler, Grandpa Tipton done had his himself a reputation for being a hard man and gosh awful stout too. One time he picked up a wagon and throwed on 10 boys because they was a disrespecting his and gals liquored up and all, and that's after he done whooped 5 of them. 15 in tall is the total. Men and women, folk was all a mite tougher then, with leather where they come from in the hills, and some rougher than a cob at that. Now Buster's Grandpa Crawford was called Panther because when one night lady he was riding into the home place, a panther jumped on him from a tree whilst he was a horseback. Now Grandpa Crawford killed that there panther, Dater and the Hammer, and was always known as Panther Crawford from that day on. Guess he was scratched up a bite, but nothing like a little Grandma's potion wouldn't cure. Anyhow, they both hunkered down and grabbed a hold of that there statue. Now, Grandpa Lawrence told the other boys to get what they could to put up under it when they raised it a mite. You could see the veins in their necks just a-bulging. Sweat popped out of their foreheads like dewdrops. They corded up tighter than Dick's hatband and began to lift it. Boy, Buster said he wished Tench was there. What a sight of strength the boys seed that day. Between the two of them, they lifted that statue an inch, then 2, then 6, a foot, and Grandpa Lawrence said to put in the blocks. Well, Buster and Grandpa turned her loose, and he says to Buster, "Now, Buster, put your back into her now. We gonna raise her up good and proper now. Blister or bleed." Buster says to his Grandpa Lawrence, "I ain't a-quitting. I'll do my part." Grandpa Lawrence says he never thought otherwise. Then no circus strongman nor weightlifter done what them two done. They got 'em a good grip and laid into that statue, After about 10 to 15 seconds, that darn statue plumb raised right straight up. Well, all the boys got up under it and got her propped up real good and went to a gawking. It was a life-size statue of the Madonna, Jesus' mama. Solid gold at that. Now that was something to see. How in the devil they was going to get it out of there was another question. Well, they pulled the winch line in from the boat and pretty near took out the whole back of the 70-foot yacht. Had to turn her loose. Now they all discussed the situation and decided to come back later the next day after pondering on it for a bit. They all hated on back to the boat, and when they got on board they seed old Hartley with his hands in the air. There was them two fellers that tried to steal the map, and two more that looked like some kind of foreigners. Had rags on their heads of some sort. Right mean looking, with funny looking knives in their belts. Well, them other two looked kind of dark complected like a Italian or a Latin person. Them fellers told all the boys and Grandpa Lawrence to put them up and then began to question them about what they was doing and if they found anything. Of course, the boys know what all this about, and so did Grandpa Lawrence. Well, them fellers got right fretful and smacked Grandpa Lawrence and then each of the boys. Now that didn't sit well, neither with any of them. Them Fern fellers done bit off more than they could chew. 'Cause a gun or no gun, whoopings come cheap in cotton country. Ain't nobody gonna smack Grandpa, and especially his own. Them fellers was in for a peck of trouble, and trouble was a-comin'. Well, them fellers put all the boys and Hartley and Grandpa Lawrence down in the staterooms and trussed them up real good like. Then they motored the boat away from the site for a spell and killed the engines. They was a jabbering in some kind of tongue nobody understood, and finally they come back down and said they'd give them a little something to think about till morning, and they could talk it over, or they was going to start killing one by one. You got to say this about the boys. They was in a pickle and knowed it was serious like, but 'tweren't none of them a-scared and a-crying and a-wimping out. They was a-figuring just how to waylay them nefarious scoundrels. Now, bad as this sounds, Grandpa Lawrence had some of the toughest and longest toenails you ever seed on a body. Took 10 snips to trim them. Guess he went barefoot so much as a young'un that they got tough like that. They was also sharp, too. Well, Grandpa Lawrence told Buster to back up to him and begin to sawing them ropes with his toenail. Took a while, but he finally got that rope to fray, and then Buster just up and busted them loose. He then untied everybody else, and then Grandpa Lawrence says to the boys that he'd take it from there. Well, now the boys said 'tweren't no way he was going at it alone. They knowed he could whoop them all, but they was too scattered out on the boat, and they needed to coordinate that attack. The boys said, we got to study on this son. They made them up a good plan, and Hartley knowed where a flare gun and a spear gun was down there, and a knife or two to boot. There was also a gaff and something like a tire knocker and to knock fish in the hade as well. Well, they all let it get up in the morning early, and when they least expected a ruckus, and then went into action. Just as they was about to get on with the show, a boatload of other fellers showed up that was with them other four. Now the shoe was on the other foot. They was just a-breaking when the fireworks started up. 2 more speedboats and a couple of helicopters showed up too. Them 2 government fellers. Well, Dalton and Devane done rappelled to the deck from the helicopters with some soldiers looking fellers, I don't know who they were, and they could come down there shooting and commence then. Well, Grandpa Lawrence was fit to be tied. He up and run and grabbed one of them fellers, the one that done whacked Buster, and picked him up over his head and brung him down on his back over his knee. You could hear the bones a-breaking like a moose running in the woods, killed him down in the doornail. Well, the next feller was a-firing his gun at one of the men that come in the fracas to help, and Grandpa Lawrence snatched him up and squoze him in a bear hug like a sack of beans. 'Tweren't nothing left to be said for that feller, but Grandpa Lawrence was a-telling him it was the last time he was going to whack and threaten the boys, and just so's he knowed who done it, told him his name was Lawrence Camden Tipton, and you didn't come up and do what he done to his and kin and charges. His people live by 2 words from the Bible: do right. Well, that was the last of that feller, and you could hear his last gasp for air. He was nothing but jelly when Grandpa put him down. Well, about that time they was a-spilling over the side rails of the boat, and gosh, Friday there was Hired's Pa, all six of him, Walter's Pa and Buster's Grandpa Gus, and Jesse's Pa Mac too. They was in the fracas for sure, and left them lay in a swath of destruction. Well, them men was plumb riled and showed what them men folk from the South could do and what they done to protect their own. Well, several of the bad guys was laid out for burying and all the rest of them captured. Not a one got away. 3 or 4 of the soldiers got a dick or two, but was in fine feather otherwise. Well, everybody went on back to port, to town for a little discussion. Dalton and Devane did all the talking, and the local police just hung back and did what was asked of them. All the mamas there for the boys, but there really wasn't no squalling. They was right worried and all, but knowed their boys could handle themselves, and their menfolk too. But they did get hugs and kisses whether the boys liked it or not, and so did the menfolk. Supper was brought in, and all the folks in Dalton and Devane was there, and they asked the boys a bunch of questions. What they done found and how they done come by the map mall. The boys and Grandpa Lawrence told them the whole story and how to get in there and how Walter figured on out the distance was wrong. Dalton said the statue was stole from the Catholic Church during World War II. You see, some of them Catholics in the Vatican helped some of the Nazis get away from Germany when they see they was losing the war. Well, the Nazis double-crossed the Catholic priest and helped them and stole the most sacred icon of the church, plus what was inside. Now, they wouldn't tell what was inside the statue, but it was so important that having it would turn the tide of power in the world. Well, every country wanted that statue, and that's why Italians and Arabs and South Americans and Cubans wanted it. Heck, even a Russian or two was in the bunch that was rounded up. The Presidential Corps was sent in to fetch her back to retain the balance of power in the world. Well, Dalton said the boys done what nobody had done so far and did one heck of a fine job for the United States of America. There was a debriefing of sorts, and all the boys and folks had the pledge not to say a dang thing about this here adventure. Hartley and Nigel was also visited by the appropriate authorities and told the same thing. Now, all the folks were sent on their way and told to enjoy the rest of their vacation. Well, don't you know, all was a twitter when they got back to their hotel and with their folks. They stayed up most of the night a-talking and discussing, and then the folks would come together and visit some more. Lots of coffee was drank at night. The boys didn't rightly get off scot-free because the folks was worried sick for them, but the boys knowed the routine. Just never was as serious before. You know, a little fussing was to be expected, but nothing come of it. The menfolk just took care of their own, and their women just knowed it'd be fun and done, if it could be. Thing about folks down home is they was the kind to ride the river with. But the thing that was talked about was what Buster and Grandpa done a-lifting that there statue and Walter's ciphering on distance and all. That was something for sure. Well, after the following week, the boys and their folks went on back home on the airplane. All the way this time. About a week after they got back there was a visit from Dalton and Devane. Danged if and Walter's Uncle Jeff wasn't there too. He come with them. Walter said to the boys, "Now, don't that beat all?" Well, Uncle Jeff shook Walter's hand and even give him a hug in private. Seems as though them trinkets and baubles was old pirate treasure and not none of the stolen Nazi loot from the church. So it was finders keepers under the salvage rights of the sea. Now they had taxes and had to pay a portion to the government of the Bahamas, but it left right nice sum for the boys. The boys said they wanted to share a piece with Hartley and Nigel too, and all their folks would get a chunk as well. Seemed like they done fell in again and come out smelling like a rose. Well, Dalton and Devane told the boys if they ever wanted to join them in the presidential corps, they was welcome. Uncle Jeff just winked at Walter and told him he would see him soon as he could get loose. Said he was right proud of his nephew. Well, before Dalton and Devane left, they presented a letter to each of the boys and Grandpa Lawrence and the menfolk. It was a special letter from the President of the United States of America. The boys' letter was a mite different from the rest, but basically it said they had a commission to any military academy of their choice if they had a mind to attend, and their country recognized their patriotism, loyalty, and duty to the U.S. of A. Well, I reckon it was one heck of a vacation, and they had to get on home to get some rest from it all. The folks all said if the second vacation was anything like the first, they was going to have to think about going. Them boys sure enough knowed how to get in some fixes. That's for sure. Well, that's all of vacation, folks. Y'all have a blessed day. It's old Buster signing out.